Okay, so now we're going to look at the right stories for online media because I do believe that this is a key to some great coverage for most small businesses today. So, straight off the bat, one of the things to bear in mind is that most newspapers have an online version. So, whether they're national, whether they're local or regional, they'll often have a website that basically from there they put stories from the actual newspaper. So, the thing to bear in mind with that is that you can essentially get two bites of the cherry potentially. So it's not uncommon for a story to be pitched to the newspaper and then for it also to appear on their website. In terms of how the process tends to work, while there's an online editor in a lot of publications, it tends to be that they won't necessarily take stories directly. They will take the stories from the newspaper itself. So, to give you an example, if you pitch a story to a local publication, so your local newspaper, you've called them up, they like the story, they're running it. Now, the reporter will write it up and they'll write it up and put it into submission for the sub-editor to then include in the actual final printed paper. During that process, the editor who oversees may decide, or sometimes it's the reporter, but essentially someone decides whether it appears online also. Now, I would generally say keep the story with the reporter because, in my experience, more often than not, what appears in the paper also appears online. Of course, there are exceptions to the rule, and occasionally I've had it in reverse where a story has appeared online in the newspaper's website, but it hasn't actually made the printed page. So it's just something to bear in mind because I don't think this needs necessarily a separate pitch, but it's just to bear in mind that you can essentially sometimes get two bites of the cherry with one pitch to your newspaper. So the thing to bear in mind as well, with the beauty of the World Wide Web, there's so many opportunities, which I'm going to go into in more detail throughout this session, but essentially you can get lots of consumer and trade opportunities. And the thing with coming online is that the lines are blurred. So in the previous slides I've showed you, I've talked about how trade is different to local and how local is different to national, and they're all different to each other. However, online, there aren't those rules because you get particular trade publications online, you get particular consumer magazine publications, you get particular local publications that have web versions or sometimes just standalone websites for a particular city, a particular neighbourhood or a particular community. So there's lots and lots, there's a real wealth of opportunities there. So if you have a story that is consumer or trade, it could likely have a place online. And the other thing to bear in mind, and it's kind of a sad fact of the way the media may be heading, but you may or may not be aware, but a lot of newspapers are, cutting jobs, they're now folding quite often and they're going online. So that means there's lots of online publications that are purely online. So they'll call themselves magazines, but they're not magazines in the traditional sense as we know it. They're online magazines. So, from your perspective, it's a great opportunity because when you put a story online, it lives there forever unless that publication closes and gets rid of its content, but otherwise it lives there forever. So it's got the longevity and also it's got access to a wider audience. And I'm going to go into some more of the reasons why it's a great thing for you. The other great thing about online is that you can tap into a bigger audience. The clue's in the name. With it being the World Wide Web, of course, there's so many options more for people to access it as opposed to being just in a print publication. So, for example, even if you get into the online version of a local newspaper, that website can be accessed anywhere from across the world, and that means you've got a larger audience, and it's really helpful, for example, if your audience is online. So you sell, for example, a product that you distribute across the globe, you've got your own clothing line, or you've got, handmade ceramics that you ship worldwide. It's a great opportunity because in pre-internet world, if you can cast your mind back, we didn't have such luxury. You get into a print publication and it's only read by the person whose hands it falls into. However, with online, your opportunities really are boundless. Another great thing about PR, and something I've mentioned previously, is that there's often scope for advisory articles and Q&As, and particularly in a lot of the B2B, so trade online publications. I'll show you some examples in the next slide, but essentially, for example, in the UK, there's websites such as Real Business or Business Advice, which is aimed at other SMEs and small business owners. And they actually need lots of quality content from experts. So even if you don't have a PR story in the traditional sense with the criteria that I've mentioned previously about a new product or service or research, if you've got something you can advise on, and as an expert in your field, I've no doubt you have, you can potentially pitch those kind of articles, those kind of PR angles to these publications that take them. And the clue with this is really, again, doing your homework, seeing what kind of publications are out there in your industry, what your peers are reading, what's of value. And if you see them offering advice and guide articles, throw your hat in the ring, drop them an email, offer them some exclusive advice in your area of expertise. That's the beauty of online. It doesn't have to be necessarily a PR story in the traditional sense, because if you've got some advice to give, there's likely an outlet where it will be heeded. Okay, so the other thing with online is it really helps with SEO, linkbacks, and online marketing. So the thing with that is with quite a lot of websites, not all, I have to urge you, but essentially with quite a lot of websites, often you might get a link back, so the link back to your website, which directly helps with your SEO. Even if you don't get a link back, the mere mention of your name will mean that you'll come up in Google searches. And the beauty of all of that is it really helps with your online marketing and your credibility, because not only do your peers get to see that you're in these publications, if they don't happen to come across that publication and see your story, you can then promote it, because you can then link their article to your own, for example, business Facebook page, to your own LinkedIn page. And I've done that in the past, and I've done that for my clients. And what they've really found is the real value is the fact that they have a huge amount of credibility that comes with being featured online, because essentially they are authors and experts as a result of it. Another thing I really wanted to mention is that guest blogging really is great PR. So essentially, one of the things is sometimes it's called content marketing, but for me, it's just another form of PR. And there's a huge amount of blogs out there, and I'm sure you know of blogs within your industry, and they're absolutely worth an approach to say, you know, hi, I can write on this subject, can I offer you an exclusive guest blog? And if they take external content, it's a really good opportunity for you. So guest blogging, SEO, advisory articles, the World Wide Web, a mixture of consumer and trade opportunities, and the fact that your newspapers now have an online version really goes to show that online is your oyster.